Good morning, sixth graders. Today's lesson is for May the 7th, Thursday, May the 7th, and my shout out today is going to Nathan. I don't know if Nathan's watching these videos or not. I haven't seen him online recently, but I just wanted to give a shout out to him and let him know that I miss him and I hope he's doing well. So, those of you that actually watch it, you can just let Nathan know that he was mentioned today on the video. So today's lesson, we're going to be on page 310 and 311. 310 and 311. Yes, I was going to say. Anyway, I was going to show you a picture. This is my son doing his final exam at college. So he took advantage of the beautiful day and took a test outside. Don't you wish you could do that sometimes? So if you haven't read the 2 pages, go ahead and read that now, and then we will discuss it. I'll ask you questions, and we'll talk about it. Okay, so we're talking about medieval England, and one of my favorite stories is the story of Robin Hood and the Merry Men. And there's been a lot of different shows on TV, a lot of different movies portraying Robin Hood. Some are good, some are not so good, but you know, you have the Disney Robin Hood thing. But the basic idea is, here's this guy who learned how to be an archer, learned how to, you know, with a bow and arrow, was a good swordsmanship. He had his band of merry men, so his gang, they lived in Sherwood Forest, and his thing was to rob from the rich to pay the poor. Now, this is a legend. No one knows if he actually existed. There might have been men in the world that were like Robin Hood to help the injustice of people. However, according to the Bible, you're not supposed to rob from the rich to feed the poor. That's not the way to go. Now, Robin Hood could have been a hero. He was a hero in all these legends, and people still looked up to him, and the story still goes on, and they're still making movies and things about him. But it's just one of those fun stories that that we know about, or we should know about. So Robin Hood, even though his intentions were good, that's not how you do it. It's not how you're supposed to help others, according to the Bible. So one of the things that we talked about yesterday, we talked about the king, the first Plantagenet king, and we talked about the Magna Carta. I don't think we talked about the Magna Carta, but the Magna Carta was written in Latin. It was sealed by King John in a meadow called Runnymede near the Thames River. Okay, so let me ask you some questions. Remember yesterday we talked about the different types of justice by ordeal, or trial by ordeal, and then trial by jury. And the ordeal was, okay, so if he's guilty, he's going to rise to the top, you know, put something on him and cause him to maybe drown. And so if he rises to the top, he's guilty. Well, then he's going to die anyway because he's guilty. But if he sinks to the bottom, he's innocent, but he's dead anyway. So it's not going to help. I mean, you're going to lose either way, right? And then you have the trial by jury, which your juries, you know, you have the trial, and then you have the peers tell you if you're innocent or guilty. Kind of like how we do in America today. Not all the court systems are just. Sometimes they're corrupt, but the majority of the time, they do try to do what's right. Okay, so what could be done regarding the sheriff's decision about land ownership when there was a disagreement? Okay, because the sheriff was the one. Like, so in Robin Hood's case, they had the sheriff of Nottingham, but the sheriff in this legend, the story, he's corrupt. So what could be done regarding the sheriff's decision about land ownership when there was a disagreement? So it could be retired. The case could be retired. Basically, what we would call nowadays in our jury system a hung jury. That means the jurors couldn't agree, so they would either have to dismiss the case or they would have to start all over again, which causes a lot of problems and a lot of money, and it's a pain. Okay, so the case could be retired, and if it was a particularly difficult case, then they could take it to King Henry II and he could deal with it. Okay, how did the decisions become England's common law? They were written down, but not only were they written down, they were enforced. Okay, who succeeded to the throne of England in 1199? Henry's son John. Henry's son John. And what put John at odds with the people? He imposed heavy taxes and used his power to gain money and land for himself. Okay. So why do you think at the start of this lesson, I kind of told you a little bit about the legend of Robin Hood. And so why do you think people made up these stories at that time? Well, a lot of times they would make it up to prove that, to take back the fruit of their labor, because they worked really, really hard in these fields and in these lands, and then it was taken away from them, or the Lord owned it. And so they wanted to show how unjust the rulers were. Also, they could be based on true people, outlaws, who took matters into his own. I know, like vigilantes who will go and they'll commit a crime because the police force isn't doing it, or the justice system. We're not to do this. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. We're not to take vengeance on people, even though we feel hurt. If someone does us wrong, we should do it legally. Needs to go through the proper procedures to, and I know there's circumstances and there's things that seem very unjust, but we're still required to do it justly. Do you think Robin Hood should have lived a life of stealing? And if not, if yes or no, why? Well, according to the Bible, the answer should be no, because God wants us to live honest lives. We should act as if we're in the image of God. Even though his intentions were right, the ends do not justify the means, and that's a philosophy that a lot of people think about today. It doesn't matter how you get to the end, as long as you get there, as long as it's successful, as long as it benefits you, or whatever. The circumstances turned out right. It's not the case. The ends do not always justify the means. Should Christians help people in need? Absolutely, yes, because God tells us to love our neighbors. If we're capable, if we have the money, if we have the ability as far as health to help others, then we should do that. So, what are some ways to help people in need? Well, this would be a classroom discussion. So take a few minutes and think about it. How can a person help another person in need? And I will give you some suggestions that they have given in the curriculum. Okay? People pay taxes so that people who cannot work or who cannot earn enough from their working are able to get help from the government. So we pay taxes, but there are people in this world who, like Vietnam vets or people who have been injured, or they don't have the ability to work and they don't have the health to work, so the government gives them money. They're not taking advantage of the government, they just need government help. And so a lot of times people pay extra money for taxes to help those people. I know when I had cancer and I couldn't work for a year and a half, I got government aid. I got it's called SSI, and it's supplement money that would help me. And I also got help because I was so low under the spectrum. I got a lot of my medical bills taken care of, which I'm so thankful, because I'd still be probably still be in debt today if it hadn't been for people who give, and people who give to charity and give to hospitals to help. It's like when you see those St. Jude commercials at Christmas time, to give so that these children can go to these hospitals and they don't have to worry about cost or payment. The hospital pays for it. So those are some things that you can help when you grow up, or you can understand. Agencies distribute clothing, food, and other goods to the poor. So you have Goodwill, and you have, our charity things that we do every year at Christmas time. While we give food, we collect food, we collect blankets, we collect jackets, socks. Sometimes we do socks. Churches can designate a portion of what the congregation gives to be used to help the poor. Some churches have a benevolent, I can't say that word right now, but they have a gift offering for others. And I know that sometimes in the past my church has helped me with a lot of things, especially after my husband left, and I had to raise a 6-year-old boy by myself. So the church really blessed me then too. Some people can donate food or money to people in need, and some people may invite them to live with them for a while. So I've used examples of how I've been helped by the government and by the church, but also when I was healthy and I did pay my taxes, always paid my taxes, and I always gave to the church, it was almost like God was giving back. And a lot of times, whatever you sow, you reap. And I'm not saying God blessed me because I gave when I was younger and when I was healthier, but God will bless you. And you never know, you may need that time. I never thought that I would need help from the government. Actually, when I signed up for it, I was kind of embarrassed, because I'm like, I'm not this kind of person. But I knew that I had to feed my son, and I knew I had to make a living, even though I was so sick that I couldn't actually go to work. I had to take a year off of teaching. And I really tried to teach. I lasted for 2 weeks, and I couldn't do it anymore. And then the doctor, because my immune system was so bad, they told me to not do it anymore. Okay, so those are some examples that I told you about, and hopefully you came up with some yourself. And it doesn't matter how old you are, you're 11, 12, 13, you can always think of something to do to help others. What led the Pope to excommunicate John from the church for the time? John disputed with the Pope over who should choose the Archbishop of Canterbury. I'm really having a hard time speaking today. Sorry about that. Okay. And okay, the next page. So back then, a lot of times the Pope had more power than the king. And the king didn't want to be excommunicated from the church, because if you were excommunicated from the church, that meant that you couldn't go to heaven. And it was a scary thing. And the Bible doesn't say that you have to go to church to get to heaven. Okay? How did the nobles determine that King John was violating their rights? By examining the English law. We do this too. When we feel like our rights are being violated, we go to the Constitution and we read what the Constitution says and our rights in the Constitution. You hear the term, that's not constitutional, which means, basically, that's not in the Constitution, or the Constitution protects us from that particular thing, okay? Our case. So it says, I'm going to show you the image. 4 copies remain of this 1215 Magna Carta. This copy is from the British Library. Okay, so how did the nobles get King John to sign the Magna Carta? They included the signing of this document in the negotiations to end a revolt against the king. Whose interests did the nobles have in mind when they designed the Magna Carta? their interests. They wanted to know that they were going to be protected. Okay, and what ensured the king's submission to the laws? Nobles gained the power to compel the king to obey. Okay, and then after a while, how did the English people view the Magna Carta? They viewed it as a statement to help protect the citizens of England. And what impact did the Magna Carta have in the founding of the United States? They used it as a foundation and as a basis for resisting the taxation from the King of England when they came. Its legacy is seen in the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So we kind of copied that. Even though we were leaving England, we kind of copied the documents. Okay? Let's see. So look at the Magna Carta, and I'm going to read this. It has me reading to you. So as I read it, I hope you're following along. It says, the Magna Carta was written as if the king were addressing his subjects. Although much of it concerned matters applicable only in feudal times, some of it applied to later times as well. Here are a few of the rights granted in the Magna Carta. Neither we nor officials will seize any land or rent in payment of debt, so long as the debtor has movable goods sufficient to discharge the debt. No aid may be levied, taxed, in our kingdom without its general consent, unless certain requirements are met. No sheriff, royal official, or other person shall take horses or carts for transportation from any free man without his consent. Neither we nor any royal official will take wood for our castle, or for any other purpose without the consent of the owner. Can you see a pattern here? It's protecting the citizens of England. In future, no official shall place a man on trial upon his own unsupported statement without producing credible witnesses to the truth of it. So those are some examples, and that's kind of like what we use. In our Bill of Rights, we use, the freedom of speech. We use No Quartering Act. When the Revolutionary War was going on, the British soldiers could go into anybody's house, take their food, take their home, and live in there. And so now they can't do that anymore. The government can't force a soldier to live in our house and take our food that way. There's other things that protect us. They can't take our cars or anything that belongs to us without saying, oh, yeah, you can borrow my car, or you can come live with us for a while. We'll feed you. Okay, so I think that is basically all today. It was a pretty interesting lesson. So we finished the Magna Carta, we finished England, and so tomorrow we're going to be talking about the castle. Those are interesting things to talk about. So have a great day, and don't forget that I love you, I miss you, and I hope you're making good decisions.